committed couples, whether they're in domestic partnerships or marriages, should get certain benefits. But what about, and you mentioned people who might choose not to marry, or people who want to live with a group of friends, or people who raise children on their own. In its effort to channel people into marriage and hold out these rewards, what is the negative impact on those people who don't respond? And more importantly, what is the impact on their children? Because the children don't make the choices for what sorts of relationships their parents are going to have. And so if all of these benefits are good for families, maybe they should be good for all families, regardless of whether we're talking about a couple committed or not, or some other configuration.
And I think it's important to note too, when we do look at these states where the bigotry is really sort of entrenched in the state constitution, like Missouri, there's this unintended consequence where you create non-traditional families out of people trying to rectify the bigotry, right? So if you work at WashU, we're entitled to domestic partnership benefits, but the state of Missouri won't let any entity extend benefits that are tantamount or similar to marriage, which basically most human resource people in the state of Missouri have determined to mean that if we're going to extend domestic partnership benefits, and we are because it's the right thing to do, that means that really any individual who works at an institution who's entitled to domestic partnership benefits can extend those benefits to any other adult that they cohabitate with. So at WashU, if I lived with a woman who's not my partner, who I'm not married to, but she's an adult and she wants access to my health care, I can put her on my health care. I can put one adult on my health care. We don't have to be married. We don't have to be in any kind of partnership. We just have to be cohabitating. That's how the state defines it. So what Missouri has done, essentially, is sort of discourage people that work at WashU from getting married, right? Because in other states where, the law is a little bit kinder to LGBT people, those domestic partnership benefits are usually not extended to situations that we would consider sort of heterosexual cohabitation. So in Vermont right now, the way that the law that just passed is, nobody's getting domestic partnership benefits. And what that means is, too, that if you live with someone who's not your spouse and they have a child and you have access to child care as part of your job, and you're not married to that person, that child doesn't get access to that child care anymore. That child doesn't get access to your health care anymore. So what you're saying is right. There's all these unintended consequences of focusing on marriage, where there are probably much more pressing social justice issues. Poverty in general, but specifically access to health care, child care, all these things that we know to be important, and probably that no one would argue are important, and they get lost in this conversation about marriage because we assume that marriage solves these problems, right?
So I'm going to try to respond to both your question and something that you made me think about, Gary. Which, and it's interesting because on Easter I was at a friend's house and we were actually having a group of us having a conversation about this issue, and my friend Phyllis, who's a lesbian, who's been a lesbian for a very long time, to very much the point you're making, Susan, it's like, I don't have any interest in getting married. She's in a relationship, but it's not this level of commitment that would make her want to get married. But I would like to be able to designate you, Lynn, my best friend since we were undergraduates at Mizzou or wherever they were. I would like to designate you as the person who would get all of these benefits instead of it only being available through marriage. So I think there are a number of people who have that kind of desire to have much more flexibility and how we control who has access to our resources.
Why do we assume that a sexual relationship is necessary
Right.
in order to trigger these benefits?
Right. So that's my effort to respond to your question. And then I wanted to, there's an idealism that I hear in this your previous comments that I really appreciate. And that is, if we give everyone the same rights and we stop making it about this word, then we'll make more progress. We'll be able to advance social justice, and we can have this more clarity in language. I have no faith, so to speak. I have no faith that the majority of people who are opposed to same-sex marriage really are fighting about language. They do not want anything in our culture that in any way legitimizes our relationship So we could yield, I believe, on the whole issue of marriage and settle for separate but equal. It would not end this debate. We would still be in a position of fighting for social justice, fighting for civil rights, that a group of people would organize vigorously to oppose because of their faith tradition.
Last question?
Okay, kind of along with what you just said, I think that heterosexual people who are opposed to gay marriage can kind of blame themselves because the institute of marriage has been undermined by heterosexual marriages. I mean, we've had to come up with new words like starter wives for people's first wives. And, you know, I mean, there's shows, all of these things, people are going through so many marriages. And so, you know, the legal aspects, yes, we've been talking about that, that's great, and I'm sure that, like, the legal aspect of marriage is very important. But why stop there? Like, why are we limiting just to legal? Why can't we move on towards spiritual things? Because if marriage is so sacred, yet the sanctity of marriage has been broken by all of these heterosexual couples over the years, then, like, why are we just stopping to legal?
I think for me that really becomes a question of, are you a member of that community? Because I wouldn't want someone to come in and sort of tell me or the other members of my faith tradition sort of how to be a Jew, right? Like, you know, we're Reformed Jews. Like, I don't think they would be happy if they came in and were like, you guys got to stop eating bacon. That's not okay, right? Like, there's a reason that we're Reformed Jews. And so I think you sort of have to recognize it's not all about the bacon, but my grandmother would be having an aneurysm. But I think that it goes back to like a really fundamental American thing, which is that, you know, there in theory should be a separation of church and state. We don't necessarily see that happening right now, but what you're talking about is kind of a pretty direct violation of that, it seems like to me. And I would be really uncomfortable with that, you know. I wish that we could go in and sort of tell people who are espousing bigotry from the pulpit not to do that. But they're sort of entitled, right? It kind of comes with the freedom of religious speech that goes along with that. There's a lot of things that people that talk from that perspective say that I don't agree with, but that they're entitled to that perspective because it's kind of a fundamental constitutional entitlement, you know. And so the same thing that protects. Yeah, okay, go.
No, but I don't think you were saying